It looks like a Mercy one, but that back there used to be Ankeny's only Walmart. Before super Walmarts were around, that's where we came. That was Walmart. Back in the 1990s, Ankeny was a different town. The latest census for the city of Ankeny came out, and it said 76,000 people live right here in Ankeny. I moved here in 1990, a long time ago. The population back then was only 20,000. That means we have seen 1,600 people gained in the city of Ankeny each year over the last 35 years. 1990s when I moved here. That right there, this is where I lived, right back here on West 1st Street. Now, I'm going to take you down a journey of what it looked like in Ankeny back in 1990. 1st Street, where we're at right now, ended about right here. It ended on Irvingdale, and right down the road is John Deere, which is a whole nother thing we're going to talk about in just a little second. But I know that when you came down this road, it would stop right here. You couldn't get across the ravine and back behind the country club without going up to 5th Street and driving all the way around. They put in the bridge, which is a huge advancement to help you get out to 415 and Saylorville Lake. But right down there's John Deere. We're at the corner of Linden and 3rd Street. Now, that was never the entrance to John Deere back in the 90s. That was just a solid fence and cornfields. And they've changed everything up. You know what? State Street ended at Ordnance. You couldn't drive State Street all the way through town. It ended at Ordnance, then you had to head back to the east because John Deere had all that area locked up. And as you know, it was a munitions plant. That's all for a whole nother story. Prairie Trail was developed in about 2006, 2007, and that changed everything. But right here on Linden and 3rd Street was one of my favorite spots. Circle around here with me. Right back there was a gas station. If you're from around here, you might know that used to be Four Sons gas station. It was a great spot, kind of out of the way. A lot of people like to go there. But now we're going to head to another great spot where a lot of people went, the theater and the bowling alley. This building back behind me is Community State Bank back in the 90s. It's where I got my first checking account. And then if I swing around here, this was Paramount. This was our theater here in Ankeny. Paramount Theaters was there. Now it's Ankeny Christian Academy. The basketball arena or the basketball stadium, that wasn't there. So it's just one big parking lot. And then over here we had a rental where you could get movies, which was connected to the theater. Then you had Bread Dough Pizza. And then next to that was Daylight Donuts. And Daylight Donuts still exists here in Ankeny. It's up on Ankeny Boulevard. But I remember just around the side door, you could come here after midnight and get a bag of donuts for $1. What a deal. And then across the street was the bowling alley. Right there. The bowling alley was a place to be. It is now gone, but it was a fun place to have here in town. They finally built a new one at B&B Theaters. So now you can bowl again, but it's just not like it used to be. But what is like it used to be is Faith Baptist Bible College. Now that's just down the road here. That really hasn't changed a whole lot. Don't worry about me, I'm just swimming in the city pool. Do you remember back in 1990, this is where the city pool used to sit? Now it's the fire department, right here on 1st Street. And this is where we ran our 8th grade track meets. Yeah, this used to be a football field and a track. The 8th grade track and field day was right here. This is where we practiced lightweight and heavyweight football. Right here. Now it's a band shell. It's a great spot to have fun. But right over there, we did Summerfest. Yeah, back in the 1990s, Summerfest was right here. Parkview Middle School, Hawkeye Park. It was right here in this location. Then it jumped up to Prairie Ridge, and then it went over to the district. But this is where I remember it as a kid. And that back there was a library. And on the other side of the library was Parkview Middle School. That was the 7th and 8th grade building back in 1990. Oh, and I remember Dillow's. Do you remember Dillow's? So this corner is one of the most popular corners in the state of Iowa back in the 1990s. As a matter of fact, 1st Street and Ankeny Boulevard had the highest traffic numbers of anywhere in the state, which is crazy to think about. But this right here, so you have Parkview Middle School, then you had the walk-in clinic, the health clinic. So if you got sick, why not have it right by the school? And then you had Dillow's. This was Dillow's Super Value. That was a great grocery store back in the day, no longer exists. But this is where Dillow's was. I remember that clearly. And on in-service day on Wednesday, we got out of school at 1:30. This parking lot became crazy because all the kids would come through this direction and they'd go over to McDonald's, which is still over there, where you could get 5 hamburgers for $5. There's also Tim's Amico, which is still here. It's crazy because there are still some businesses that survived from 1990 to today. I want you to throw in there. Tell me what you remember about 1990. What companies were there that are no longer? What businesses are still around? Do you remember the Bear? the Bear restaurant, the iconic Bear restaurant from the 1990s. It was right behind me, right next to the Yankee Clipper. And guess what's still around? The Yankee Clipper. We're in Uptown Ankeny. This was the old downtown Ankeny before Prairie Trail came around. And there's a lot of things that they advanced around here. The High Trestle Trail comes through here. You've got the amphitheater over there. You've got so many good things happening down here in old downtown Ankeny. But the one thing I always remember is the Bear restaurant. So that Bear restaurant used to be right here. Then it moved over by Goodwill, which also used to be Food for Less. That's right, Food for Less is right back here where you see Dollar Tree and the Goodwill store. And right across the street at BMO Banking Center, that was actually the Bear restaurant for a short stint in the early 2000s. Then they tried to make a comeback in their original spot and it didn't work out. But that Bear restaurant was definitely iconic. Kind of like the name Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster? Right across the road here was Blockbuster. That was like the place to be if you wanted to rent movies. Next to that was a sports page, which in today's world, the sports page is a restaurant, but back then it was the only sporting goods store here in town. And next to that, we had Great Clips and a couple other spots. But over there is the Hy-Vee. Now let's talk about Hy-Vee. You remember Hy-Vee and Drug Town? That's right. New City Church used to be the Drug Town. I had a colleague that once got shot in Drug Town. Glad you're still around, Steve. But Drug Town used to be right there. Drug Town was Hy-Vee's pharmacy. It's kind of like what CVS was or Walgreens. It's detached from Hy-Vee. And speaking of Hy-Vee, the old Hy-Vee happened to be right there where the thrift store is. That's where Hy-Vee was when I moved to town, I think back in 1990. And then they built the new spot up on Ankeny Boulevard where it is today. And I actually worked there as one of my first jobs in high school. Speaking of high school, after all our sporting events in high school, the parents would go out and they would start their evening out at Bench Warmers, which is still there. The good old-fashioned Bench Warmers has been around this entire time. I think it's gone through about 6 or 7 different ownerships, but they'd start there, then of course they'd end up over at the Clipper. But right behind Bench Warmers is Jade Garden. Well, it used to be Jade Garden, and Jade Garden now is over by Hy-Vee, and it was in the same spot when I was in school that Godfather's was, the good old Godfather's, which is no longer there. They built a new spot, and now that spot is gone as well, unfortunately. But Ankeny has seen so many changes. What are some of the craziest changes you've seen in Ankeny? I'm going to take you to the high school, which is now Northview. Northview Middle School, right there, used to be the only high school in Ankeny, the Ankeny Hawks. That's where I went to school back in the 90s, and I know there was a YMCA connected to it. We spent so much time at that YMCA. I mean, that was the place to go. You go all summer long, you'd go to the YMCA. After school every day, you'd go to the YMCA. It was always packed with little rugrats running around. This right here, my friends, is the Ankeny Hall of Champions. Were you on one of these teams, or were you around when one of these teams won state? I know I was. 1995 boys basketball state championship. Oh yeah, baby. Well, speaking of schools, Northeast Elementary was built in 1992. Now, when I look back at how Ankeny was developing, it was starting to develop to the northeast a little bit, because back in the 90s, the early 90s, is when Briarwood Golf Course was built. And Bill Kimberly had a vision, not only for the golf course, it started right over here with Barclay. This Barclay development was a Kimberly development that pushed north. And then Briarwood came into play. They developed the golf course. And Bill Kimberly, along with Strand Construction, they developed a lot of the houses around the golf course. Did you know? No, you probably didn't. But I worked as a cart boy at Briarwood Golf Course when it opened. I was a senior in high school. It was a great time. But we're talking about schools that were built in the 90s. Did you know that Prairie Ridge Middle School was built in the 90s? Let's go over there and check it out. There's one part about this that's really special to me. I didn't know it was being built in the 90s, but I do remember one particular spot where I played basketball at night because it always had a light over top of the basket. So this is it. This is the hoop I used to play on. Well, not the exact one. The base is still the same. Of course, we didn't have square backboards back then. It was a long time ago. And with times changing, they also don't have the light. There used to be a light above it. And this is the only place I could come and play basketball into the night. Because you know us 80s kids were built different, right? We ran out until the street lights came on. And then when you were in junior high and high school, you came home at like 11 o'clock at night. You went and played. We'd ride our bikes up here. And I'd get home about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I was doing good. I was playing basketball. I wasn't partying. Back behind me is Prairie Ridge Middle School. Now, can you remember when that was Northview for a hot minute before they switched the high schools out and to put the two different high schools? So this used to be Northview. Then they transitioned it into Prairie Ridge Middle School. Now that talks about this whole sports complex. Back here, you got softball fields, baseball fields, soccer fields. You know, when I was a kid, our baseball fields were back behind DMAC. That's right. Back behind DMAC, they had about 4 or 5 fields, and that's all we had for Little League. Now we have this huge complex. It's absolutely gorgeous. 18th Street's just on the other side of these sports complex, and 18th Street used to be gravel road back in the early 90s. Can you believe that? We used to take the back route to high school, which is Northview, and now, you know, that high school, we'd take the gravel road, that back route. We'd go over the railroad tracks, which is now the High Trestle Trail. We would take the gravel roads all the way across town on 18th Street. We would, you know what? I was on the golf team in high school, and going out to Otter Creek Golf Course was like going miles out of town. And now the city has grown around it. With Costco coming, everything has grown so much. Let me know what some of your favorite things about Ankeny used to be, and some of your favorite things that they have brought to Ankeny. I want to know all the good things about Ankeny, all the things you remember right here in the comments. I appreciate you coming along. And please, let me know if you have any other ideas that you want me to do videos on here in Ankeny, because I'd be happy to do it. My name's Tim Scheib. I sell real estate. Been selling real estate for 2 decades. If you want to buy or sell a home, make sure you get a hold of me. I know this town pretty well.